My name is Sue Miller, and I am a county engineer. I am one of those lowly people in the food chain that is neither a traffic engineer, nor do we have a huge staff with a traffic engineer. We're a small county, about 30,000 people down here in southern Minnesota, and we have a huge run-off-the-road departure issue in greater Minnesota in general, and specifically here in Freeborn County. That's one of our biggest issues, too. So we work together in Minnesota as local county engineers, and we realized that this was a huge issue, and we needed to find a way to do what we knew had to be done. And so we got together and we created a county engineers safety committee, and this was back in about 2003, and we started meeting about once every 2 months, talking about different issues that we all were facing in our common battle about these fatalities. When we had these fatal crashes in a small rural community like ours, you know them. They're our kid's baseball coach. It's somebody you go to church with, and inevitably it comes back to you as the road authority. What could you have done to have changed that? It becomes very personal at this level. And we got together and we pulled together the resources we needed. We've got a great partner in MnDOT, and Sue Groth is on the line and has been probably one of our greatest champions in this adventure we're on. Our Minnesota LTAP, our federal highway folks, especially our safety engineer here, Dave Kopaz. We've also formed a partnership with the Northland ATSA Association and with the National Association of County Engineers, which I'm also a part of. We created a number of goals that seemed to be important to us on what we were trying to accomplish as a statewide initiative. And in Minnesota, we also have a Towards Zero Death initiative that's made up of all the 4 E's that works on a statewide basis. In southern Minnesota, we're also, our 11 counties happen to be the first regional TZD that was rolled out. So the 11 county engineers in our district work together very closely on that initiative as well, and I'll tell you why that's important later as we move forward. I want to mention one other thing. One of the bullet points on this slide is about training and safety research needs. And Minnesota is unique in another arena is in that we have a local road research board. And that board is made up of several county engineers, several city engineers, several of our key partners in the Minnesota Department of Transportation to identify what are the issues that we need, the real practical issues that local engineers are facing that we need some research done on, some training done on, and what kind of safety things are out there that we could learn more about how effective things are. And that board's been very effective at pulling things together from rural intersection lighting and what it's doing to crash rates in Minnesota to what we do with our twisted end guardrails. We ended up with a number of pots of money out there, and there was some confusion amongst the local level practitioners of what strings were attached to what fund of money. So I'll talk just a few minutes about each one of these and not belabor the point, but this is really where the grassroots movement started for us, and money sometimes becomes the seed that gets planted that starts all kinds of initiatives. And back in 2005, we had a local road improvement program that was state-funded by a state bonding initiative. There was $5 million put in it statewide for 87 counties to go after for safety improvements. The following year, it was up to $7.685 million. Weird number because of the way politics goes. And in 2008, right now, the last bill that I've seen for this session is $30 million is proposed for some statewide bonding initiatives. And the kind of projects that had to be done with this kind of money were really kind of projects. So it enabled some counties like Cass County here to add paved shoulders onto a roadway that they had a run-off-the-road crash problem, and they needed to address that and didn't have the resources at the local level necessarily to make that kind of investment. We also had some 2 or 3 of our metro counties that, like what you saw in Davy's presentation just before, started using some speed-activated signs in school zones, and we've got some really great before and after crash data on this, and they've got some really impressive numbers on how effective these signs continue to be even a year or 2 after they've been up. Then we have the Comprehensive Highway Safety Program money, and that pool of money, I'm not really great at explaining exactly where that money comes from. It's money that kind of comes back to Minnesota because we don't have primary seatbelt or some of the other things that we don't do exactly right that comes back through more behavioral type issues. And that pool of money had not been available to county engineers for some time. 2005, 2006, they opened up $2 million for county engineers. And again, in 2006 to 2007, they opened up $4 million that county engineers could apply for that money. And they included county engineers in kind of that planning committee to say, well, where do we want them to apply for this money, to use this money? Where is the most effective place where if we were going to give grants to locals that we want them to put this money? And with run-off-the-road crashes being a big issue, curves seem to be a big thing in southeast Minnesota. This is the 11 counties that I mentioned before that we're working on our Towards Zero Death regional initiative. And we sat down with all 11 county engineers and really took a hard look and said, what is it that we should be focusing on? We looked comprehensively across the 11 counties at our crash data, and it was very clear to us that, especially if you get close towards the river and the curvy terrain, that was an area where we really could make a difference. Surprisingly, I'm on the left half of that part of the slide are the 11 counties there, and my terrain here is very flat, pretty straight, and when you get thrown a curve, it is a curveball for people. It's not like driving over in the river country where people are used to driving curvy roads, and our crash rate really indicated that was a problem for us especially. Each county engineer was left to their own discretion to choose how many curves and what their priority curves would be and how far we could make the money go, and each one of us did it just a little bit differently. I don't think there's in the room that absolutely agree 100% on how to do something. And how Freeborn County decided to do it was we already had a signed database that we had been developing, not really knowing what the retroreflectivity rules were going to say when they came out, but knowing that we had, both from an asset management perspective and being prepared for upcoming rules, we needed to be prepared for what Matt had just presented. So we took that signed database and we started from a very basic standpoint of saying where do we even have curve signs out there and what kind of advisory is next to that sign, and let's go out and look. Why did we put that advisory sign up there in the first place? And as it turned out, many of our curves had never been ball banked. It was just somebody's gut feeling that this is the advisory sign we ought to put up there. So we went back and updated all of those signs, rechecked all of that, had some support out of our MnDOT district down here, our traffic people down here to help us and train us and teach us what we should be doing. And then we went one step further and we said, you know what, we've got this great crash tool that, again, our local road research board had developed on behalf of all 87 county engineers working in partnership with MnDOT, who had all the crash data for each of the counties. And we put it, basically, what the tool was a product that Iowa had developed at the C-Tree that we were able to partner with them and develop it for Minnesota's crash database. And we could deliver out these data sets just for your county. You could pick your surrounding counties, all 11 counties in southeast Minnesota. We could do it any way we wanted to do that. And for us, we went ahead and cross-referenced where our signs were with what our crash database was telling us. And then we kind of overlaid that all on a GIS map to show us where all of our crashes were, where all of our signs were. And we created a kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, on how we could document where we were going to make some improvements and what could we hand off to the sign guy so he would know exactly where we wanted him to be out there, what curve we were talking about, and put it together all in a 3-ring binder, a couple sets, one for the sign guy, one for the maintenance superintendent, and one for myself. So we had good documentation of what we were doing and why we were doing it. One of the concerns we have at the local level is the tort liability issue. Somebody goes off the road at this curve and there's no chevrons, but somebody says, well, you had chevrons there, why don't you have them here? We wanted to have good documentation as to why we were trying to do what we were trying to do. We weren't the greatest of traffic engineers when we started this project, so we did lean on our MnDOT District 6 traffic engineer and some of the resources that we had available to us. At the time, we had a comprehensive highway safety plan, the 2006 version, that illustrated kind of our safety strategies of installing chevrons as one of the focus points where we wanted to be. We had our Minnesota Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices and our Traffic Engineering Manual that we brought all 11 counties together with our sign personnel, and we sat through a full-day training session on, really what should we be doing? What does the manual say that we should be doing? And one of the best things that came out of that is, most local drivers don't know when they leave one county and drive into their neighboring county. To the local driver, they're on the same highway, whether it's in my county or my neighboring Mauer County. And what was missing in all of that is we don't have very good uniformity and conformity. We have this wonderful resource that says we're trying for that, but when you really looked at it in practicality, we struggle a little bit, especially with curve delineation and curve enhancement. So as we went forward, you can see a before and after condition here. We picked out our top 20 sites that we could sign in Freeborn County. This is our CASAD 13. I think we'd had 2 fatalities on this one, and we had to look at more than just your traditional 3 years of crash data when we did this analysis. We're in a very rural, low-populated county. It made a lot more sense to us to really go back. We have crash data for 20 years back. We looked at the whole 20 years to see which ones had repeated crashes, which ones looked like areas where we could make a difference. And this one is our CASA 22 project, or curve that was selected. And I just want to take a moment to say, some of these initiatives that you just heard about, this all kind of started in about 2003, and it started to really change our safety culture here in Freeborn County. And you can see it. We all talk about performance measures, and to me, one of the best and most basic performance measures is how many fatalities are we having on our county roads. From 2002 to 2004, we averaged 3 fatalities a year. From 2005 to 2007, we're now averaging 0.3 fatalities per year. So all of these things are now starting to come together where we're really making a difference. On the local level, if we could make that kind of difference in all counties, we could really move that 42,000 fatalities a year number way, way down. We didn't do that with just the Chevron program. We've done some of the other things, specking out the safety edge on all of our paving projects since 2006. We've got a very aggressive program for obstruction removal, especially field drives. We're a heavily agricultural region down here. We have a lot of field drives going in and out of fields. Most of the farmers have semis now. They can't get in and out of most of those field drives anyway, so we're removing them. And I think that's one of those things that we're seeing a huge benefit to. So when those drivers do run off the road, they're not going to hit these 2-to-1, 3-to-1 field approaches and get launched into the cornfield. We're doing some of the basics like the mailboxes. And one of the other areas where we're really seeing some benefit is our maintenance forces have taken ownership of this issue, and it's really changed the culture in my whole department that every truck driver that's out there now drives their road, not with the perception of pavement preservation necessarily and where do we have to fill a pothole, but boy, this is an unsafe situation. We should get rid of that driveway, or we should get rid of that concrete head wall on somebody's driveway. And it's really been a nice change for our department. And finally, one of the things we just recently did was a road safety audit. And what that did for us is it really solidified that we're doing the right thing and we're on the right track. Maybe we need to tweak our criteria a little bit, but what it did was it validated what we were doing. Out of all the lane departure crashes that were reported in a 3-year time period, 32% of our crashes occurred on horizontal curves. We looked at just the severe lane departure crashes, it jumped up to 47%. That's a pretty big representation, or an over-representation, if you will. If you know and understand our geometry and our topography, that our horizontal curves are probably less than 10% of our whole highway system, and we're seeing that kind of a curve to geometry ratio. It really tells us that we're on the right path with the Chevron program. In that report, or the summary of that report, one of the things that we hadn't thought of when we set up the first program was we have a number of visual traps where either a township road takes off of our county road and leads the driver's eye down, or maybe it's a row of trees or a power line or building site, what have you, that really pulls the driver away from the curve and off the road, and they don't realize where they're supposed to go. So this is one of those areas that we need to go back out in the field and reassess and see where we might want to take a more proactive approach. Recently, and most of you have probably seen this, last fall a new study came out from the Texas Transportation Institute on what your curve radius relationship is to your fatal and injury crash rate. And so we took a look at that data, and that really seems to fit what's happening in Freeborn County. And we went back and we're starting to pull plans. We're starting to make our priority list based on what is the radius of our curves, and say certain curves probably need to be prioritized a little bit higher. And then again, we coupled that with the crash data that we already have. And so with that, we've come up with a prioritization list. We have first-tier curves, second-tier curves, and third-tier curves that we'd like to get out there and get some attention to over the next coming, probably 2 or 3 years as we go through this. But how do we try to fund that at a local county level? And that really comes back to the third pool of money, the federal safety money that came out of the Safety Lou Act. The high-risk rural road program is out there. That's a pretty limited pot of money for 87 county engineers in Minnesota and the MnDOT roadways that are here. The bigger pot of money would be the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And before I go into how Minnesota has done that, I want to take kind of a step back and, or maybe not step back, but step up to a higher level and look at it as a national issue. And I also serve on our National Association of County Engineers. And what this graph is showing is what our legislative position is on trying to get some highway safety improvement money invested on our local roads. And what we're basically saying is so many counties or so many states have data on their county roads and their local system that are telling us that there's 50% or more that are of the fatal and serious injury crashes that are happening on the local roads, that even in those states where we don't necessarily have good data collection and good databases to tell us that what kind of crash ratio we have on the local roads, there's enough out there across all 50 United States that we know, 50% is a pretty conservative number to say that, especially when you look at run off the road and lane departure crashes, we need to spend some money and some attention on the local roads. And I will say that this was a struggle for us in Minnesota to really start talking about this kind of new vision or new concept of how we maybe invest federal money that traditionally has gone to the state highway system on the local level. When we sat down and started talking about it, we had some great partners and great champions like Sue Groth and her boss, Bernie Arsenault, and they were really supportive of us. But there was not all the folks in MnDOT that were necessarily supportive of the concept of much-needed revenue. And I understand that, and for the DOT folks that are on the line, we weren't necessarily out there looking to take money away from MnDOT, but we were really looking at how could we go after this problem of these people dying on our roadways. And the champions that were within the agency, like the Sue Groths of the world, were really standing behind us all the way through. So in 2005, we started the discussions. By 2006, we'd finally put it in a formal resolution. In 2006 and 2007, we were making that jump from the Comprehensive Highway Safety Plan into our Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And there was a lot of rhetoric and language in the plan that talked about how local roads is a huge piece of the puzzle, but there was no money that came with it. And as we transitioned into the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, we started to realize that our investment strategy had to reflect what our crash data was telling us. We had champions at a higher level as well, and this might not be so popular, but we had our State Transportation Improvement Program that needed to be approved by the federal highway folks. And when that came through, after all the partnership work we had done talking about how can we voluntarily start to transition some money towards where these problems are, and it still didn't seem to quite get there. Two folks in particular really stepped up. Our safety engineer and our division administrator stepped up and said to our senior leadership folks in our Minnesota Department of Transportation that we're not too thrilled with your Transportation Improvement Program plan as it sits right now. We don't see enough investment in the local roads that reflects the crash data that you have, and they kind of sent it back for revision and said, when you revise it to include some local road financing, we'll approve the plan. So, again, our MnDOT folks were great about crunching that data and coming up with exactly what is the ratio of where our fatal and crashes are happening out there, the serious injury and fatal crashes. And they took that and they applied it to the amount of money that Minnesota gets in the Highway Safety Improvement Fund and the High Risk Rural Road Fund. And they broke it down by our Area Transportation Partnership districts, District 6. So roughly $1.4 million a year would be coming to the district for safety initiatives on the local road system. And complementarily, in a complementary way, another $935,000 would be coming to the state for that same type of work. But we weren't necessarily up until now financing that problem this way. But we are now. Going into 2008 and 2009, we'll be financing that. Trying to get the local engineers to see how we need to do this, and I apologize, this is a little bit blurry, but run-off-the-road crashes is our biggest area where most counties had that problem. Head-on crashes, lane departure, kind of fit right alongside with that, but definitely if we were going to look at a district-wide basis across all 11 counties, run off the road is one of our areas where we really needed to focus and work on. MnDOT, in making this new move of investing traditionally federal money that's gone to the state system onto the local level, said we're going to give as much guidance to our counties as we can, and they developed by district, by those ATP districts, a graph like this for every county in the state, so counties could have some assistance. Like I said, we're not traffic engineers, in knowing what type of projects we really needed to be looking at to save lives. They took it one step further than just telling us kind of what your ballpark problem should be. They really said we wanted to take a proactive, systematic approach to this issue. In rural Minnesota, greater Minnesota, it's really hard to find black spots on your system, and what we really needed to do, come up with a way that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. We needed to come up with a way where we could be proactive and systematic on our deployment of these strategies. And we said out of that money that's awarded to each Area Transportation Partnership District, we want at least 70% to be in a proactive manner. So some sort of systematic stripe program, sign updates, doing the safety edge projects, paving shoulders, cable barrier, those kind of projects. Those are the projects that we're going to rank much, much higher as we all applied for that money. We just had that first application round here a couple of weeks ago. Our applications were all due on February 1st. And we had an amazing amount of interest in that. In 2008, or for the 2008 funding cycle, MnDOT received 66 applications totaling just over $15 million. And almost all of those projects fit into our strategic highway safety plan and fit in our target strategy areas, targeting run off the road, some intersection issues, some very proactive, systematic approaches. Remember, you see, across the bottom, we could choose if we wanted the money to be spent in 2009, 2010, or either year, depending on how it fit with our own county staffing issues and county funding issues for our match. Then we kind of say this would fit better into our 5-year plan, our capital improvement plan. The other thing the application would allow is for us to apply and receive money not only as an individual county, but to apply and receive money as a district. So some of these low-cost safety improvement projects, it's very difficult to do a small federal project for just one county like mine. But if we combine it with my 10 neighboring counties in my district, we can get a pretty nice contract for, say, a Chevron program like what we've done before, or a rumble stripe contract. And so when we send these applications out, if they get funded, then one county in the district becomes the host agency, fills out all the project memorandums and follows the federal process, and that's how the money then comes to that one county to administer for all the other counties in our district, or the money through that project memorandum process comes to the county for us to administer on just our project. So we have to follow that same federal process as if we would on any other kind of local project with federal money. And where do we go from here? We've got a lot of goals and a lot of thoughts. The 3 big applications that we put in for this round of funding, which we won't know until probably mid-March or so, is we wanted to take the whole concept of a strategic highway safety plan, and we wanted to make it real at the local level. And not only do we have a Southeast Towards Zero Death initiative, we now have a Freeborn County Towards Zero Death initiative. And my sheriff's deputies that come to our monthly meetings and breakfast, so they usually show up, but those guys are really starting to understand that things like speed enforcement are a huge, huge issue for us to try to change the safety culture in our county. So we would like to take basically Minnesota's plan and boil it down to a county level. So we have a strategic highway safety plan that covers all the 4 E's. We also want to extend our curve enhancement program, and our road safety audit also indicated we have some intersection problems, and of course those are the ones that always grab the headlines of the dangerous intersection. And with that, that's all I have for you.
Good. I was just going to say, I think we're running out of time, and I'm not sure how these things end, if we have a lot of time or not. Just one comment. Wow. And for those of you that are looking at ways to get your local agencies more involved, clearly Minnesota has a model in Freeborn County's example. And not only that, what they're doing on the curves and some other treatments would be applicable to all the highways. And they're showing results. So, Sue, great information, tremendous. Thank you much. Now, before you all run away, we have a couple polling questions that we'd like you to answer. And, of course, don't forget about the next web conference on May 15th. It's going to start at 1 o'clock Eastern Time and run until 2. 1 until 3, 2 hours. And we need to consider those folks like out in Hawaii and the time they have to get up in the morning. So that's why we're moving it ahead, and hopefully that'll work for everybody. Now, here are the polling questions we'd like you to take a crack at. And certainly if you have any comments, we'd appreciate hearing about it, how we can improve our web conferences. And I'm sure, Sue, that we'll be talking to you more about, the things that you're doing there in Freeborn County and getting more agencies involved across the country and doing the kinds of things that you've accomplished and the success that you're having. Thank you to all the speakers, though, as well. I mean, everyone was an excellent presentation.
Yes. This is Mary. Let me just add one thing. From our point of view, I concur with Pete absolutely about this presentation. I want to thank all the presenters, but I think, Sue, we're going to be asking you to write this up as a brief but good case study on how things can be done. So for those of you that want more information with Sue's cooperation, I think we'd like to do that.
That'd be great.
You want to take it back to the polling, or?
It's back.
If you have any audio questions, we can take a couple minutes, even though it's 12:30 exactly.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask an audio question or make a comment over the phone, please press *1. Please unmute your phone and record your name clearly when prompted. Your name is required to introduce your question. Again, to ask an audio question over the phone, press *1. To withdraw your request, press *2. One moment, please.
Ooh, look at that top one. See?
I have a question from Joanne Tingle. Your line is open.
Hi, this is Joanne Tingle with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and I had put a question in the chat box, but I didn't know if you all saw it or not. We just want to know, how do you translate? How do you actually transfer the funds, federal funds, to the local agencies? That's been our hang-up here. And also, if you could give us Sue Miller's contact information.
Sue Groth is one of the attendants and participants to this. She can probably be a better contact to how Minnesota's process is for transferring funds to the local level, because she's kind of the one that helps administer that and provide some oversight to that. We have a very strong federal-state local partnership here in Minnesota, and locals are allowed to use a certain percentage of federal money to do, say, a regrading project or whatever it might be. So much in the same way that we apply for those funds and are awarded federal funds, we have to go through a project memorandum process. We have to meet all of the cultural resources reviews and do all of that work up front. Then we have to have contracts approved with our state agency, and we become kind of an arm of them through a delegated contract process. And then we can administer the contract as we would our county state aid projects. We sometimes have maybe a higher level of testing requirements or documentation requirements, but it's not too bad. And then when we complete the project, then we have to submit all of the final follow-up paperwork that shows that we did what we said we would do, and we met all of the requirements that we needed to meet, and it's worked extremely well in Minnesota. Could it work better? Absolutely. It could always work better. I'm in a small office. I'm the only registered engineer in this office. Sometimes county engineers get a little scared off of all the paperwork that goes with federal money, but I stand by my position that they wouldn't need county engineers if it was easy to do this job. So sometimes you have to go that extra step and go through some hoop ladders and work a little harder to get the federal money. We are working on the next place where we hope to become a model for the rest of the country, and it is in these low-cost safety projects, and trying to find a way where we can really streamline those projects So if an agency wanted to apply, say, for a $100,000 grant, federal grant, we could streamline and get some categorical approvals, if you will, for, say, a Chevron program where you're not disturbing any dirt, you're not perhaps going to be any historical areas kind of thing, and see if we can't speed up the process a little bit to get the money out there a little bit faster.
Well, thank you, Sue. You've been an inspiration to all of us, and I was just yesterday at one of our Fayette Urban County governments speaking about this very issue, and they're really interested. And I would like to be able to transfer the HSIP funds. I'm just not sure how at this point. So thank you very much.
Right now, I show no further questions.